Good morning. My name is Marcy Sidlowski, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I have a few announcements for you before we begin our service. Firstly, a warm welcome to everyone this morning, to those of you here in person and to those watching on YouTube. At Gloucester UU, we create a home for people of many religious beliefs or none. People of different skin colors, different ages, different incomes, and different abilities. If you're full of joy, please come in. If your spirit is heavy, please come in. Our Unitarian Universalist heritage teaches us how to keep love, never hate or fear at the center of our beliefs and of our work in the world. As a welcoming congregation, we affirm the full inclusion of people of all sexual orientations and gender identities. A very warm welcome to any visitors with us this morning. If you'd like to get connected and learn more about our community life, please take a moment to fill out a yellow pew card located on the back of the seat in front of you, or sign the guest book in the vestibule. We hope you will join us for refreshments downstairs in our social hall following the service, so we can have a chance to connect in person. If you've been coming for a while and want to have a name tag made, there is a sign-up sheet at the back of the sanctuary on the table. And to make it easier for visitors and new members to get to know everyone, let's all get in the habit of wearing our name tags a little more often. Before we begin, if the folks watching at home would like to light a candle or chalice along with us here, please go ahead and get one now, so that we can do this ritual together in spirit. Thank you.
Welcome to Gloucester Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Jonathan Hudgins. I have been attending here for about 2 years, and today I will be leading our service where we explore the topic, what brought you here? I went for a run at Ocean Lawn this morning in Magnolia. Man, what a beautiful place we live in. Much of what brought me to this church is the history of the place. So buckle up I'll be weaving plenty of history into today's service. In July 1846, A.D. Mayo became the pastor of our church, our Gloucester Church, then known as the Independent Christian Society. During his time here, he was also correspondence secretary of the Gloucester Lyceum, where he frequently invited Ralph Waldo Emerson to speak. Mayo wrote in 1849 describing the harbor, coves, islands, open sea, rocky hills, and curving beaches of Gloucester, Rockport, and Annisquam.
He wrote, "Upon this cape is every kind of natural scenery. There are quiet coves where the waves lose their force and break gently upon the sand. Bold promontories stretching into the ocean where the foam and spray are always flying. Islands out at sea crowned with lighthouses, piles of rocks full of caverns through which the water gurgles and roars like a great living creature struggling to escape confinement. Fleets of small vessels, always flitting about the horizon and sometimes crowding the harbor in hundreds. And beyond, in fine days, the blue southern shore, lifted up against the sky like a faint picture. The road round the Cape, perhaps the most delightful drive in New England, running over hills by the side of little meadows, through avenues of willow trees and forests, always in view of the sea. Quiet ponds of fresh water hidden among the woods, groves of pine trees where the wind overhead and the sound of the waves upon the distant beach unite in perfect harmony. Pastures full of flowers, and damp thickets where the magnolia grows, and towards the country, the beautiful hilly district of West Parish, gradually ascending to Mount Anne, from whose summit you can look away over the tops of hundreds of forests to the blue sea line glittering upon the horizon, the monument of Bunker Hill, the highest spire of the village church, and the Bay of Ipswich and its adjacent shores. Here, within the space of 10 miles, is collected almost everything to charm the eye of the poet or attract the investigation of the lover of science. Add to this the generous and proverbial hospitality of the people. The religious society is composed of intelligent and, what is yet more grateful to a minister, kind and sincere people. The church is a large building in the architectural style of the last century, situated at the extremity of a long avenue of trees, so that in summer, the sound of the wind and the birds among the branches come in at the windows and mingles with our worship.
Our opening hymn is Love Will Guide Us, which is number 131 in the gray hymnal. You are welcome to rise in body or in spirit. In the Unitarian Universalist faith tradition, we enter into worship by the simple ritual of kindling our chalice. The flame of our chalice this morning is a symbol of the warmth and brightness of our connections. And the double circles of the sculpture remind us to keep inviting others into an ever-widening circle. As Vincent lights our chalice, if you have a candle or chalice prepared at home, please light it with us now. Please turn to number 458 in your gray hymnal. This is the affirmation. Oh. Thank you, Jim. Instead of our usual affirmation, we will be reading together this one that was written by Walter Royal Jones, Jr., a minister who served in Gloucester from 1957 until 1963. Guests, feel free to read along or simply listen. The number is 458. I should have put numbers up there, I'm sorry. Oh, we have them, just for the hymns, though. I'll give it just one more second here, make sure everyone's there. 458. Mindful of truth, ever exceeding our knowledge, and community, ever exceeding our practice, reverently, we covenant together, beginning with ourselves as we are, to share the strength of integrity and the heritage of the Spirit in the unending quest for wisdom and love. Please be seated. As we light the peace candle, I want to share words from a UU minister with deep connections to Gloucester, Paul Sawyer. Among other things in Gloucester, he co-founded the Writers' Center. He was a leader in scores of nonviolent actions against war, nuclear power, and the death penalty. In the process, he frequently was arrested. I stopped counting at 60, his wife Susan said. His last arrest was at age 70 years old for protesting against capital punishment at San Quentin. And as a minister in LA, he once hosted the Grateful Dead when they were known as the Warlocks. His wife Susan said of him, he hated the term counterculture. He would say, "We are the true patriots. We are not the counter. Peace is patriotic." The poem Marcy will read aloud is in your program insert, if you would like to read along silently. Sarah Edgerton and A.D. Mayo, the minister who wrote the welcome, married in 1846. The same month, he started ministering in Gloucester. She was a writer, having already written 3 books and an editor for several periodicals. She died suddenly, only 2 years after their marriage and 10 months after giving birth to their daughter, Caroline. After her death, her husband published her poetry. This is one of those poems, written shortly before her death, to set our minds and hearts. After Marcy's reading, we will have a moment for silent meditation or prayer.
1848, Contemplation. Her thoughts are of the beautiful. Her soul dwells with the shapes and colors of the fair. Flowers that spring up in rocky clefts and droop mirrored above the waters. Stars hung high in the blue dome of night, like urns of gold o'erflowing all the earth. Foam-crested waves that dance to inborn melodies, light, air, sunshine, and rainbows. Hills and dells of green, far-off sweet glens among the mountain streams, and woods o'er-crowned with abundant growth of moss and vines and lichen. Dreams like these fill up the happy soul, within whose depths hard care has never entered. And from these, how easy, step by step, to rise from earth into the region of the power whose will created all this beauty and bestowed on us the higher grace of thought and taste to understand and feel it. Surely there her soul hath entered now and is entranced.
There are many ways to give. To financially support our church, you can physically mail a check or send funds through the bank's bill pay, your bank's bill pay. You can use your ATM on the website or give cash or check in the contribution plate. And of course, there are so many ways to give that are not financial. Some people find more meaning in giving in a particular way. This is what I love about our church. We embrace pluralism, variety, diversity. Whichever way you give, this is a moment to appreciate and feel good about your own giving. Can the ushers come forward? One of my favorite German songs is by Julia Engelmann, and it translates to, "Why do I feel like an outsider? And what does it mean? Because we are all different, we are therefore all the same." It is not about who, instead, that you love. It is not about how much you give. It is not about how much, instead, that you give. It is not about winning, instead, that you fight. It is not about the song, instead, that you dance. be seated. Several members who have joined recently will share their reflections on what brought them here. Starting with Wendy Foster, Julie Allen, Lawrence Allen, and then Susan Ackerman.
Hello, I'm Wendy Foster, and I'm here to offer you some insight into who I am and what brought me here to join the UU Church. So what comes to mind are a few things that are mostly variations on the same theme, communicating. Also communicating, community, kind of the same thing, little different aspects of the same theme. Three things I really want to talk about. The first one is expanding my intellectual curiosity, and the second is listening and learning. Third is communicating with like-minded people. So here goes. First, expanding my intellectual curiosity. When I tell friends that I have joined this church, the word church seems weird to me. Why is that? I think it's because, for me, church, this church, not just church, this church is so different from what I remember when I was growing up. Going to church when I was growing up was what you did. No questions asked. So given the choice, I never attended any church after high school. This automatic thing was gone. What I really like here is the thoughtful, insightful pieces each week. And then there's another bonus or two, things like the Chalice Circle, book club. Hey, what's not to like? The second thing I want to talk about is listening and learning. So being a language instructor, teacher, or facilitator, whatever you want to call me, I describe myself as that I subscribe to the idea that it's essential to be a lifelong learner. I definitely have to keep one step ahead of the people facing me. Way back in the days of yore, I taught business English to adults in Germany and France. And then I transitioned to teaching French and German in middle school in Massachusetts. And now I'm back to teaching English to adult learners. So coming here, it's a real treat to be in the passenger seat for a change, right? So the last thing that I think is important is communicating with like-minded people. That's you. After the service, I get to go downstairs where I can find out about you people, where you're from, why you're here, how you see the world, what you think, and whatnot. It's a gold mine, and it's a gold mine of interesting people, yes. You do have some very interesting ideas, insights, thoughts, and whatnot to share. So here's my language input. Fantastico, fantastique, fantastisch.
Thank you, Wendy, and good morning, everyone. My name is Julie Allen, and I've been a lurker here for a long time. Long-time lurker, you know, short-term joiner. I started coming here full-time about a year ago, but before the pandemic, my husband, Lawrence Jones, and I would come to the Meeting House on the Green music series and really loved it. And I also had a number of people in my life who had been former Methodists, but were now UUers. And I'm like, okay, there's something special going on here. But I need to go back and talk about why I became a stealth visitor and then how I joined this church. So I'm from a super Methodist family, super churchy. Ministers throughout the family tree. 2 of them are active now. I grew up going to Asbury Grove in South Hamilton, which is a Methodist camp meeting ground. My great-grandparents were the ones who had the cottage there, so I was very much enmeshed in Methodist life in the North Shore, although I grew up in New Hampshire. But my dad, when he came back from the Vietnam War, he could no longer believe in a God that blessed the bombs. So I grew up with a schism in that we were constantly going to church, but my dad was not a part of it. And when I was about 10 years old, my family shifted to the Congregational Church in town because we had community. And we had like-minded community, Wendy, yes, and people who would welcome my dad. And I've talked about this before with Jonathan, and he asked me, what does your dad believe in now? He still doesn't believe in God. I think he'd be a good UUer, honestly. But he's still a part of the Congregational Church, but it was the community that drew him back. But when I left my family, when I left my parents' home, I left the organized church, and I was fine with that. Absolutely fine, but I had lots of weird encounters with organized religion throughout my life. Odd encounters with Mormons that would leave me kind of shaken. We've lived all over the world, and the Mormons are all over the world. And yeah, I found them unsettling. I worked at a food pantry in Brattleboro, Vermont that was run by an evangelical church, and somebody asked me if I believed in Jesus, and I'm like, well, yeah, he existed. To which she responded, I got one. I'm like, okay. I managed a refugee center in Hong Kong, and that refugee center was managed by a faith-based organization. So we had a lot of faith-based partners, which was fine. I had a very strict anti-proselytization rule. I'm like, you can't recruit. But everybody was very concerned about getting another one for Jesus. And that's a direct quote that made me really, really uneasy, because I feel like we should all live with our various belief systems and not be coerced, particularly in that kind of setting, into something that might not fit. But there were things that also set me alight as an adult not going to church. Liberation theology and the liberation of the oppressed. I think North Carolina's Moral Mondays are one of the most exciting recent examples of that in practice in the work of Reverend William Barber. Living in Nepal, where the gods touch every facet of life in your being. That maybe is too much for me on a day-to-day basis, but I loved living in that environment. Living in Haiti and living in Japan, voodooism and Shintoism, which seem very different, but they're all about animism and where humanity and the environment are intertwined. And then ideas about deep interconnected nature of being, about justice, about breaking through oppression. This feels very UU. So when we finally moved here full-time in 2025, with ruptures in our social fabric, ruptures in our moral fabric, I needed to become more than a lurker. So I needed a community rooted in justice, connected to the world at large, to making it a better place. But I did continue to lurk, though. I did volunteer for a couple of things with Holly. Thank you very much, Holly. But I didn't go to social hour because it was too much. So my husband, a staunch atheist, started coming with me, and he was the one who started dragging me to coffee hour. So thank you, Lawrence. And let me turn it over to you.
Just so I don't go over. Not that that's as likely as all that. Yes, my name is Lawrence Jones. You will note that when I married Julie Allen, I did not give up my birth family name. And I did not grow up in church at all. I am not a Christian. I was not raised Christian. Nobody in my family has been in church for 3 generations. That doesn't mean we're not spiritual, and that's a little hard to get your hands around. When I was in college, I really got to thinking about the issues of faith and belief and came to the conclusion that they weren't the same thing. And I did a fair bit of research in the fundamentals of the language and then didn't write any of it down and forgot it all except for the underlying feeling. But I went back and redid it over the last couple of years. And the issue, as I see it, is that if you look into the roots of the word belief, that really does mean what we think it means. It means belief. The word faith tracks back to an old Germanic word, which doesn't mean belief, it means trust. And I feel a certain trust in the world. I don't know where that could possibly take me if I weren't a very lucky person and very happy in my situation. But that's very fundamental to me. And I do also look at the people who have belief but not trust and thinking, oh my God, that must be horrid. You know, the feeling that you might, for example, be damned and have no trust that you might be saved. But that's not my path. My path is very much in the trust and not the belief. I was drawn here partly to support Julie, of course. Our journey into this congregation has been very entwined, but it's also been separate. We both made our own decisions to come. And what pulled me is very much what pulled other people, and that is the real special community that we have here. I actually like all of you, not just as a collective, but I haven't met anybody here that I don't like, who irritates me, who bothers me. I have not met a single person. And granted, it's not that big a community, but I still think that that's pretty damn special. And it is also giving me a really good window into the community here in Gloucester and into the history here in Gloucester. So that's who I am and where I'm from and where I am. 2 minutes and 59 seconds.
Suzanne, you want to speak to?
Yes, it's on.
Excellent. Thank you. Closer. All right. So what brought me here is a bit of a coming of age and coming back around story, I would say. I think church starts as a hypothesis for everybody, especially for kids. The setting for my framing for that is the 1967 modernist building set back in the woods of Danvers in a warm, quietly joyful architect turned UU minister named Ed Lynn, giving sermons on everything from Frank Lloyd Wright to the world famine, and Sunday school teachers who taught us how to meditate. I used an image of the school gym and Mario and Luigi sweeping all my thoughts away to clear my mind. And so I grew up UU, and when I tell people that here and in other UU organizations, people are like, oh, nobody grew up UU. And that's confusing because, you and you have been around for a while. My parents themselves did not, either of them, grow up in a religion, and they found it on their own. So I'm really grateful for that beginning. In Sunday school, they took us to services at Jewish temples, Islamic mosques, Catholic churches to help us see and learn about diversity of thought and worship. They brought us to the woods to pick fiddleheads and dandelion greens to saute for lunch. So the hypothesis, as best as I could construct it, was the earth is a beautiful organism that we're honored to live within. People are worth knowing. Difference is interesting rather than dangerous. Justice matters. We have obligations beyond our own front doors, and people who are not the same can still make something together. So the hypothesis, as best as I could construct it, was that. It was the 80s. We are the world. Hands across America. I launched into the world in the 90s, and I figured after college, with all of that, I would join the Peace Corps, or maybe Paul Simon's backup band. Because all that energy was really in me from kind of the disillusioned idealists who still really thought the world could be changed through singing and holding hands. And in time, I actually moved to New York. I didn't join the Peace Corps. I thought about going to Africa, and I didn't. And I leaned hard into art, the art world, and street politics, and I didn't think about church at all. Christian nationalism crept into American politics so deeply. I went from indifferent to religion as a construct and an institution to something closer to allergic. So even though I came from this idyllic version of it, just the word church was unpalpable. And I think Wendy mentioned, like, the word church. I'm going to church. I still tell people I'm going to church. People are like, what, you really? Okay, let's not talk about that. And so I stopped associating whatever hypothesis I was still carrying from that Danvers North Shore UU church with me with church. And I found community in other places. I found it in a couple places, a lot of different places I would say, but a couple that were interesting as I was thinking about it is I found it in record stores and the music community and on the dance floor. And I think eventually the most interesting path in that was I found it in house music, which is a really warm and open-hearted space with a history I learned more and more about as I got into it. Disco and house is built largely by Black, Latino, gay, and queer communities, excluded from other rooms. I gravitated to these spaces where otherness was celebrated, and that was kind of, I guess, an altar of worship for me. And if you've ever been to a dance club and stayed there all night, by the end, you really do feel that you've been part of a worship series. I found it at work, too. I joined the advertising world, and I found communities of sometimes disillusioned and disheartened creatives. Everybody had wanted to be an artist, but hey, you gotta make money. So during those days and nights of creating together, we created our own communities. Workplaces then, sort of incredibly started telling us to bring your whole authentic self to work. Of course, that's not a good idea, and it shouldn't be done. Work wanted a great deal of me, but not my grief, not my doubt, not my aging parents, not my struggles with addiction, with infertility, with my flailing first marriage, or my confusion about what life is for. A theme I've been drawn to all along, though, I guess, is rooms built around an idea of how people might be together. Most communities have a subject, though. Work is the subject. Political groups gather around a cause. The dance floor around the night and something that you can experience at least once with a few hundred people and then maybe recreate again. Church's subject, I think, is the whole thing. So death belongs here. Doubt belongs here. Joy, aging, justice, music, what we owe strangers. God if you want it. God if you don't want it. At least here. What brought me back to UU and through these particular doors was my parents. They were members. And then Janet, who's incredible, and so many others here who showed our whole family the value of church and community while my mother was dying. They really showed up, and we felt it. The world turned out to be vastly more complicated than my little kid self eating weeds in the woods in back of the church understood. And I'm more complicated. People are more complicated. And I think complexity is allowed here. The most important parts of that hypothesis held. I still believe people need to find places and find one another. Difference doesn't have to disappear for us to belong together. We have obligations behind ourselves, and I've learned that the way you find out whether values are real is that people show up. So the hypothesis, I think, has been validated, and it makes a world more a world more sense to me now. This earth is a beautiful organism. We're honored to live with it. People are worth knowing. Difference is interesting rather than dangerous. Justice matters. We have obligations beyond our own front doors, and people who are not the same can still make something together. So I'm gratefully here. Gratitude getting to know you all. And Lawrence, you have to not spend a little bit more time with me before you decide if you find people irritating.
That was beautiful. I just, wow. I really do love this community. It's sure. It's a good thing I have this written down because it is really stirring in my emotions. My family will attest I'm very emotional, or can be. I'm going to share a bit about my story and a little bit more. So bear with me a bit. How can Unitarian Universalism be a religion if we don't have a unifying belief? Consider this as I tell you my story, the details of which could fill hours, but my children tell me that I tend to go on and on, so I will try to be brief. I've had 3 major chapters to my religious journey. I have strived for sincerity in each of them. First, my parents' religion was a standard Protestant faith where the plan of salvation focused on grace and praying Jesus into your heart. Second, in my senior year of high school, I rebelled, as teenagers often do, instead of into more fun and partying, into a more commitment where the Bible, God, and church were the first in everything I did. I was one of those, one more for Jesus. I really was. And what I appreciate about this is that we love all people, including those who are a little misguided sometimes. Third, right before my daughter Ava was born, I re-examined the existence of God from a fresh perspective. And based on the evidence, I reasoned and believed, as I do today, that there is no God. I'm not here to convince you of any of those perspectives or sway you from whatever view of God you might have. That topic does make for meaningful discussion, just not the focus for today. When my wife and I moved to Gloucester in 2021, I became interested in the history of the house we bought, which was built in the early 1700s. I found history miserably boring in high school, but began to become more interested in biographies when reading Malcolm X in college. For the past 5 years, I've been engaged in understanding the eras of Gloucester and the people who lived in our house. I now find history meaningful, mostly because I yearn for connection. How were their lives different from mine, and how were they similar? The mundane, like preparing for winter, to the personal, like struggling to be patient with your children. And it's meaningful to me when I find something that I can relate to, something universal, some core of people, some core of who we are as people. The Cressy family moved to our house in Gloucester in 1834. They left farmland in Bradford, New Hampshire, to farm Fisherman's Field, known as Stage Fort today. You can see a painting of that very spot on the front of your program by Mary Blood Mellon. Those are probably the Cressy cows overlooking what is now Cressy Beach. Mary has her own connection to our church. Her husband Charles was a Universalist minister, and her brother William was our minister in this very building from 1857 to 1861, when he became Civil War chaplain in the Union Army. But why would the Cressys come to the rocky soil of New England, of Cape Ann? For my research, Elmira Cressy, the oldest daughter, married shortly after their move and the minister was Reverend Thomas Jones. Nancy Cressy, who inherited our house, married later, and the minister was Reverend Frederick Thayer. Her daughter, Settie's marriage, was performed by Reverend Richard Eddy. The connections of all these ministers is indeed that they were ministers at this church. And the Cressys were apparently members. Perhaps the Cressys moved here to be part of the more hopeful, loving, universalist religion, instead of the fire and brimstone so common in the early 1800s. And sure enough, after more research, I discovered right before the Cressys moved, when she was 17 years old, Nancy was expelled from their church for her unchristian-like activities with a boy. I do not believe in fate, but I do believe in connections. And so a couple of years ago, I decided to come and see what became of the independent Christian church. When I first learned about Unitarian Universalism decades ago, I was in the second and most fervent chapter of my religious journey. It made no sense to me. A church that believes anything, or maybe everything? I had heard the parable of the blind men and the elephant, where each describes only the part of the elephant they touch, but it is the same elephant. However, not all doctrines can be true at the same time. Many religions are fundamentally different in their goals and core beliefs. Truth, and I still believe this today, loses all meaning if we simply accept everything. This came into focus at one of the earlier services I attended. My children were curious, so they came along to an Ask Me Anything service. My son Miles asked something like, "What does UU represent and believe?" Janet and several other people here answered, converging on this answer: we are connected not by our doctrine, but by our values. Not dogma, but principles. My initial impression of an ambiguous religion was very wrong. Indeed, we do not stand for doctrine, which is the way almost all religions distinguish themselves. But the values we strive for are a genuine commitment to improving this world that we live in. It is not that belief in God is inconsequential. Quite the contrary. Your and my belief in who or what God is or isn't informs our every area of our lives. It is, in my opinion, the most important question in life to explore, discuss, and grapple with. Often, because it's so monumental, we put off this exploration, or politeness prevents us from meaningful discussion. But I love that the search for truth is always welcome here. I am so glad to belong to a place with like-minded people committed to growth, justice, and equality. This is a place where my words and thoughts are listened to, and I appreciate the many encouraging words and thoughts of others. The values from our bylaws are evident in the services and the lives of our church. When friends ask, as Wendy explained, "What is this church you've joined?" It's pretty easy for me to say values, not doctrine. It's a nice little catchphrase. But what values? It's good to remind ourselves, particularly when we have conversations with other people, what these are. Listen as I read. Which one of these really resonates with you the most? Interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence on our earth. Pluralism. We embrace our differences in our free and responsible search for truth. Justice. We oppose all forms of systemic oppression. Transformation. We commit to growth and openness to change. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. Equity. We value every person. And love, which binds them all together. These are all values I can support. Interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, equality, and of course, love. I am proud to be a part of this community where we are all connected by our values. We will close singing Lean on Me, number 1021 in your teal hymnal. You are welcome to rise in body or in spirit. Please be seated. Hosea Ballou, a Universalist founding father, preached at the Gloucester Independent Christian Church 14 times in 1798, and probably sometimes following that. This benediction of his resonates strongly with me. I find these things meaningful, that it was so long ago that he said these words that are still so true today. Do not suppose you know enough. Do not suppose you have learned all there is to learn. Do you not know that the most ignorant people are always the most knowing in their own estimation? Yes. Then be careful to the bottom of everything. And do not be afraid of investigating everything and inquiring to the cause and effect of everything. By these means you will learn, and you will be surprised to see that so many religious people have so long continued to believe what some old popes or cardinals have taught them. You may be mortified that you have not learned the truth before, but that is no matter. Humble yourselves before God and listen to that testimony, which will enable you to grow in grace. Do not grow in contention or animosity amongst each other. Do not grow in a spirit of revenge or retaliation towards your enemies, but walk honestly, uprightly, and peaceably. And may God Almighty bless you and cause your goings forth to be like the morning without clouds, which shineth brighter and brighter unto the perfect day. And now I invite those of you at home to hold up your candle, and together we will blow them out to say the words, as we say the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Till we meet again. By His Spirit's fire hold you. With its glory fold you. Love be with you till we meet again.
Thank you.